Today I will tell you true story from Redwood Bay, Oregon that one of my friends told me. I will share you as is it. Let's begin. Before that, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're hearing my story of revenge. I want to know how far it's gone. My daughter-in-law's voice hit me before I even saw her. Lena, my mother says it's time for you to move out. She thinks you've stayed long enough. And honestly, she's right. Her words drifted down the hallway like a draft from an open window, sharp, unwelcome, and cold. I looked up from the steaming pan of honey rolls I'd just taken out of the oven. They were Daniel's favorite. I had baked them every winter holiday since the year he was born. Even after my husband passed, the tradition stayed alive through my hands. Even if the house around me no longer felt like mine. Mara, my daughter-in-law, stood at the entrance of the kitchen, arms folded across her chest, her expression carved from something brittle. Behind her, Daniel hovered like a shadow, avoiding my eyes entirely. Mara, I said slowly, holding onto the counter as my knees reminded me that 69 was not forgiving. What brought this on? She stepped inside, tone hard. My mom thinks your presence is interfering. She says you're lingering in this house like a ghost. You're here, but you're not part of anything. She waved a hand around the kitchen, as if I didn't recognize the place where I'd cooked, cleaned, and quietly supported them for nearly 10 years. I looked to Daniel. My son, my only child. Danny, I whispered. Is this how you feel too? He breathed out, shallow, almost embarrassed. Mom, maybe it would be good for you to have your own space now. Somewhere peaceful. Peaceful. Once, that word meant a cup of tea on the back porch, watching my husband's garden bloom. Now it sounded like a polite dismissal. Go quietly. Don't make a fuss. I swallowed, nodding once. All right. If that's what you want. Mara scoffed. We're being reasonable, Lena. You've had a good long stay. You can pack after dinner. I turned off the oven and slid the tray of honey rolls aside, letting the warm scent wrap around us. Vanilla, cinnamon, and memories of a home that used to hold laughter. I spoke softly, more to myself than to them. I made these for the family. Daniel shifted. I saw the guilt flicker, then disappear as Mara clapped her hands together. Well, my mom is bringing tiramisu, she said. A modern dessert. Not these. Old-style spirals. She turned and walked away. Daniel followed, only glancing back for half a second as though checking whether I'd break. But I didn't. I just stood there in the kitchen, feeling the edges of the moment cut through me. The house grew quiet again. Too quiet. It used to echo with footsteps, with Daniel's teenage laughter, with holidays spent decorating the tree, while my late husband played the same jazz album every year. Now it was a different kind of quiet, one that settles into your throat and makes breathing feel like an interruption. I sat at the tiny kitchen table, the one they had pushed into the corner so I wouldn't be in the way during gatherings. The honey rolls steamed gently on the counter. I didn't touch a single one. My husband's last words echoed in my mind. When they forget who you are, Lena, you remember. And so, I remembered. I remembered helping Daniel and Mara buy this house, using the money from the home my husband and I built together. I remembered babysitting their daughter, Ava, through infancy and school years. I remembered birthdays I cooked for but wasn't invited to sit at the table for. I remembered holidays where I wrapped the gifts but was asked to stay downstairs, to not disrupt family photos. I remembered the generosity I gave freely, and the silence they offered in return. That night, something inside me didn't break, it cleared. I reached for my old suitcase, the one I hadn't opened since my husband's funeral. I folded my few good clothes, tucked away my savings, placed a photo of my husband between the sweaters. and packed the soft wool scarf I had knitted last November. Then, with trembling fingers but steady resolve, I opened my old laptop and booked a one-way ticket to Redwood Bay, Oregon, the town where I had taught elementary school for 26 years. A place where someone, somewhere, might still remember me as Mrs. Carver, not the woman in the basement. Before leaving the kitchen, I left a note. Short, honest, thank you for the years. I won't take anything I didn't bring. I leave behind only what you forgot. And I slipped my honey roll, recipe written in my husband's handwriting under Daniel's door. Let him remember what love once tasted like. But I had no idea that leaving this house wouldn't be an ending. It would be the first step toward a truth I had buried for decades. The next morning, the house was unusually bright. Sunlight spilling through the windows as if trying to disguise the heaviness that had settled in my chest. I stood at the top of the basement stairs, the place that had become my so-called living space for nearly 10 years. It wasn't a basement so much as the forgotten square of a home, carved out for utility, not for a person. When I first moved in, Daniel said it would be temporary, just until things settle, Mom. That things never settled. They shifted. They tightened. They shrank. At the start, Mara used to thank me. Thank me for meals. Thank me for watching Ava. Thank me for keeping the house running, while she and Daniel worked long hours. But gratitude is a fragile thing. It dissolves when people begin to see your help as their entitlement. It began with small rules. Lena, please don't come upstairs during dinner hours. Lena, the baby needs quiet, so no vacuuming in the evenings. Lena, maybe leave the cooking to me. Your recipes smell heavy. I told myself she was stressed, overwhelmed with motherhood. But rules multiplied. No reading stories to Ava. No sitting in the living room unless asked. No inviting anyone over, not that I had. Every restriction felt like a wall closing in, reshaping my life around their comfort. Soon I learned to move like a ghost, timing my steps, adjusting my breathing, making sure my presence didn't inconvenience them. One evening, I overheard Mara talking to her own mother on the phone, her voice drifting through the floor vent right above my chair. She's still here. I swear Lena thinks she's part of the family just because she tossed a little money into our down payment. Her old house barely sold for anything. Honestly, she should be grateful we even let her stay downstairs. My chest had tightened then, a dull ache spreading. I held onto the scarf I had been knitting and whispered to the empty room. I paid that down payment with your father's life savings. With our home. But saying it out loud made no difference. Silence had trained me too well. Another time, while folding Ava's laundry, something I did because I loved it, Mara burst into the basement. Stop acting like some martyr. You live here for free, Lena. For free. Don't pretend you're doing us favors just by existing. I blinked at her, unsure how a woman's breath could bruise more than a blow. Still, I stayed quiet. I remembered my husband's warning. If Daniel forgets who you are, you remember. So I remembered. All of it. The groceries I paid for without being asked. The school activities I covered when money was tight. The nights I sat awake with Ava, while Daniel and Mara were out later. Dinners I was never invited to. I thought the worst was behind me until Mara introduced her dream project. Pure Radiance. A skincare brand she wanted to launch. We just need a co-signer, she said casually over dinner. Your signature is all we need. Totally low risk. She slid a stack of documents toward me. My name was listed as collateral. So was my old cottage in Redwood Bay, the one my husband had renovated with his own hands. The only place that still held the echo of our life together. I can't, I said quietly. That house. It's all I have left of him. Mara slammed her fork down. So you'd rather clutch some dusty old shack than help build our future? Daniel didn't defend me. He didn't even look at me. That night, Mara accused the housekeeper, Rosa, a kind woman in her 50s, of stealing earrings. Rosa cried, swore she hadn't. I defended her. I believe her. I'd said Mara fired her that very evening. Later, I heard her mutter to Daniel, "Your mother is losing it. She's getting difficult." And Daniel's reply was a quiet sigh. That sigh told me everything. By the time Christmas Eve arrived, when Mara told me her mother wanted me out, the foundation beneath my life had already eroded. Her words didn't break me. They simply confirmed what had been happening for years. That as I packed my suitcase that night, I had no idea that leaving this house was only the beginning of a much bigger journey, and an even bigger reckoning, because someone from my past was about to reappear, someone I never thought I'd see again, and he would change everything. The second Sunday of December had always been sacred to me, the day I honored my late husband, Martin. It wasn't a spectacle, nothing loud or extravagant. Just a small table, a lit candle, and a framed photo of us taken outside our first home in Redwood Bay. His arm around my shoulders, my head leaning against him. Our smiles soft and real, not posed, not polished, just US. I set everything up in the den, far from Mara's pristine white kitchen, the one she guarded like a museum exhibit. The warm glow of the candles softened the room, blurring the hard edges of the life I had somehow fallen into. I whispered, "Hello, my love," brushing a thumb over his face in the photograph. And then the door flew open. "What is this?" Mara's voice cracked through the room like a whip. She strode in wearing a glittering red dress, the kind meant to be seen, not worn. In her hands was a silver-wrapped picture frame, new, shiny, gaudy. "I told you I hired someone to edit a new photo," she said. "Something modern. Something that doesn't make the house look depressing." She grabbed the photo of Martin before I could react. "That was his favorite picture," I whispered. She rolled her eyes dramatically. "It looks ancient, Lena. And he looks tired. It's awful for the aesthetic." She placed her new framed picture on the table. Someone had edited Martin's face until he barely resembled himself, eyes brightened too much, skin smoothed unnaturally, expression stiff and unnatural. Whoever this man was, he wasn't my husband. He hated wearing this tie. I said softly, "Well, it matches the decor." Mara snapped. Daniel walked in, carrying a tray of hors d'oeuvres. He paused when he saw the scene. "Mara," I said, gently, "can't we use the photo Martin actually liked?" Daniel sighed, the same weary exhale he used whenever he thought I was being difficult. "Mom," he said, "Dad is gone. Maybe it's time to let go. We don't need a shrine every year." The words hit me harder than any slap ever could. Ava, sitting on the couch, didn't even look up from her phone. I heard her mutter to a friend on video call, "Grandma's doing her emotional thing again." For a moment, the room blurred. My son's indifference, my granddaughter's dismissal, Mara's contempt. The weight of it all pressed into my ribs until breathing felt painful. Slowly, I picked up Martin's real picture from the floor, wiped off the dust with the corner of my cardigan, and held it close. I turned to leave, dignity the only thing I still owned. But then I saw him. Standing quietly near the doorway was a man in his late 40s or early 50s. Tall, clean-cut, a navy peacoat, eyes warm with surprise. I'm sorry," he said softly. "Are you Mrs. Carver?" I froze. "I knew it," he whispered. "It is you." He stepped closer, emotion rising in his voice. "My name is Jacob Rowan. You taught me in 3rd grade at Redwood Bay Elementary." I blinked, searching the lines of his face. A spark of memory flickered. A little boy with scuffed shoes. Thin, quiet, always hungry but always hopeful. You used to draw little dragons on the margins of your spelling tests. I said. His face broke into a trembling smile. That's me. I still draw them. Just digitally now. He laughed softly, but quickly swallowed the emotion building in his throat. I run a non-profit here in town, he said. We help displaced seniors find safe housing. That's why I'm here to discuss end-of-year donations with Daniel. My heart twisted. He looked at me with something no one in that house had shown in years. Recognition, respect, memory. I saw your name on a holiday card earlier, he said. And I prayed it might be you. He reached into his coat and pulled out a worn, folded piece of paper. My breath caught. It was my handwriting, written decades ago. A note I had once slipped into a little boy's backpack with a sandwich. Stay warm today, Jacob. You matter. My throat tightened. You kept it. I whispered. He nodded. It kept me. Behind us, laughter from the kitchen swelled again. Mara's voice boasting about her skincare line. Daniel chiming in with artificial cheer. Jacob touched my arm gently. Mrs. Carver. Are you okay? No one had asked me that in years. My eyes stung. I don't think so, I whispered. Jacob nodded just once, like he understood the weight of those words. Come on, he said quietly. Let me take you outside for some air. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a burden. I felt seen. What Jacob told me outside would be the first crack of light in the darkness I'd been living in, and the beginning of a truth I wasn't prepared for. The winter air outside the house was sharp. The kind that stings your cheeks and fills your lungs with something that feels like clarity. Snowflakes drifted down in slow, gentle spirals as Jacob and I stepped onto the front porch. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The muffled laughter from inside carried through the windows, cheerful, careless, oblivious. It felt like listening to a party I had never been invited to. Even though I had lived there for years. Jacob glanced back toward the house, then looked at me with eyes soft but firm. Mrs. Carver, he said quietly. I've been searching for you for a long time. I blinked. Searching for me? He nodded, breath clouding in the cold air. After elementary school, everything in my life fell apart. I'd bounced between shelters. My mom disappeared for months at a time, and my dad was... He paused, jaw tightening. Let's just say I didn't have many people on my side. I felt a pang of familiar sorrow. Jacob, I didn't know. You wouldn't have, he said. You already gave me more than anyone else ever did. He reached into his coat again and pulled out something something small and worn. A strip of knitted grey wool. My heart lurched. It was a piece of a scarf I had made decades ago. I'd left it in the lost and found box at school one snowy morning, hoping whoever needed it most would take it. I hadn't known he was the one. I used to sleep with this around my neck, he said softly, in the back of an old delivery truck behind the cafeteria. It was the only thing that kept me warm. My breath caught. That truck. You were living in there? He nodded. I remembered it now. The rusted green truck parked behind the maintenance shed. I had always wondered why the blankets inside shifted positions. Why things went missing and reappeared. I had left food there sometimes. Water. Spare gloves. But I never imagined. He was the one surviving inside it. One day, Jacob continued, you left a thermos of tomato soup behind the tire. I remember the smell. I hadn't eaten in 2 days. He laughed under his breath, but it was the kind of laugh that hides old wounds. You saved me that winter, he said. And you saved me again later. The world around us blurred as he spoke. Snowflakes, porch lights, Distant traffic, it all faded. I saw him not as the man he was now, but as a fragile boy shivering under blankets, clutching a piece of knitted wool for comfort. Then his voice dropped lower. When you got sick that winter, you probably don't remember passing out in your classroom. My stomach tightened. I remember collapsing, waking up in the hospital. The nurse said someone called 911, but they never found out who. It was me, Jacob said. The words hit me like a physical force. I saw you fall, he said, voice cracking slightly. I ran to the office and used the emergency phone. But when I heard people coming, I hid. I was afraid they'd realize I'd been living on school property and call someone to take me away. I closed my eyes, overwhelmed. He had saved my life, literally, while I'd spent years wondering who the nameless caller had been. After that, he continued, I left. I was scared. I thought if I stayed, someone would expose me. So I disappeared. And now, I whispered, here you are. He nodded. And here you are. But not the way I hoped to find you. He looked toward the house, his jaw tightening again. You don't deserve what they're doing to you, he said. No one does. I swallowed hard. It's complicated. It's wrong, he corrected gently. And I want to help you. I run a foundation now, North Star Haven. We specialize in safe housing and support for older adults. If you want a place to go, I can make sure you're taken care of. You wouldn't have to be alone. For a moment, all I could hear was the sound of snow settling on the railing. No one had offered me a place in a long, long time. Not a place to stay. Not a place to belong. I don't want charity, I whispered. He shook his head. It's not charity. It's returning something you once gave me. I felt something break open inside me. Not pain, but release. A first step out of the life I'd been trapped in. Let me take you somewhere safer, Jacob said quietly. Somewhere you'll be seen. And for the first time in years. I said yes. But I didn't know that stepping into Jacob's world would unearth secrets mine. Daniel's and Mara's that none of us were ready to face. Jacob didn't rush me. He didn't press or pry. He simply walked beside me as we stepped away from the house, my former refuge, now a building that felt more like a museum of disappointments. The holiday lights blinked along the roofline in colors that once meant joy. Now they felt like reminders of all the years I had spent trying to belong. Where will we go? I asked quietly as snow crunched beneath our shoes. Just for a drive, he said. Somewhere warm. Somewhere neutral. We got into his car, a modest grey sedan that smelled faintly of cedar and peppermint. I held Martin's photo in my lap as we drove through the neighborhood past decorated porches, glowing windows and families gathered around dinner tables. All the scenes I used to picture myself in. Jacob kept his voice gentle. I hope this isn't too overwhelming. No one had spoken to me with this kind of care in years. Kindness, when you've lived without it, feels like a shock you don't know how to brace for. I'm all right, I said. Just tired. He nodded knowingly. Being unseen takes more energy than people think. We drove. Another 10 minutes until he pulled into a quiet cafe. A small place with fogged windows and a hand-painted sign that said Harbor Brew. It looked like the kind of shop where secrets were shared and remembered. Inside. The warmth hit my face instantly. A soft guitar melody played in the background, and only 2 other customers sat in the corner. We chose a booth near the back. When the server brought tea and a slice of warm apple crumble, I realized how long it had been since anyone handed me something with a smile. Jacob waited until I took my first sip before speaking again. Mrs. Carver, I want to say something, and I hope it doesn't come across the wrong way. You can say anything, I said. He folded his hands, took a steady breath. You don't have to go back to that house. Not tonight. Not ever, if you don't want to. My heart jolted. No one had ever given me that choice. But my son. I began. Jacob shook his head gently. A son who watches you get mistreated and stays silent isn't being a son. He's being a spectator. My throat tightened. I looked down at Martin's picture, the real one. The one with the smile meant only for me. Your husband wouldn't want this for you, Jacob added quietly. He wouldn't want you living where you're treated like a burden. His words pierced deeper, because they were true. Jacob then leaned back, pulling something from his briefcase. Papers, photos, files he'd collected for winter outreach programs. But tucked among them were two documents that made my breath stop. One had my name on it. The other had Daniel's. What is this? I whispered. He hesitated. I wasn't going to show you until later, but I think you need to see it now. He slid the papers toward me. My eyes scanned the text. Home equity withdrawals, signatures, co-applicant forms, financial claims filed in my name, without my consent. I felt the world tilt. Daniel did this? Jacob nodded grimly. I caught it when reviewing his charity forms. He used your information for tax breaks, for leverage, even for part of a business expense. All without telling you. I stared at the papers, stomach twisting. My own son. Not just neglecting me. Using me. This isn't just dishonesty, Jacob said. It's illegal. And dangerous for you. My voice cracked when I finally spoke. Why? Why would he do this? Jacob's answer was quiet, but steady. Because people who rely on your silence will take everything from you until you stop being silent. A tear slid down my cheek. I brushed it away quickly. What do I do now? He placed his hand gently on the table, close enough to show support, but not touching unless I allowed it. You come with me, he said. You let my foundation help you. We have an entire network designed to protect people in situations exactly like yours. Housing, legal aid, counseling, everything. I swallowed hard. And what about Daniel and Mara? I whispered. Jacob's eyes hardened, though his voice stayed soft. That's the part you won't like, he said. Because once this begins, their lives won't look the same. I stared at him, heart pounding. What do you mean? I asked. Jacob leaned in. Mrs. Carver, Daniel's about to lose far more than you realize. And that was the moment I realized the truth. Leaving the house wouldn't just change my life. It would expose everything they had been hiding. For a long moment, I simply stared at the papers Jacob had shown me. My name, my identity scattered across forms I had never signed, tied to debts I had never agreed to. It felt like cold water rushing over my skin. Sharp, paralyzing. Daniel wouldn't. I began, but my voice faltered. Jacob's gaze was steady, sympathetic, but unyielding. He did. Maybe not out of malice at first, but once someone crosses one line, the next one comes easier. I pressed a trembling hand against my chest. He's my son. I know, Jacob said softly. But even good people can do harmful things when they convince themselves he won't fight back. Something inside me sagged, not a collapse, but a release. The final thread tying me to that house had frayed beyond repair. What happens now? I whispered. Jacob slid the papers back into his briefcase. Now you protect yourself. And I'll help you. He reached into his coat pocket and placed a small card on the table. North Star Haven, Senior Advocacy and Housing. You'll be safe with us, he said. You'll have a home, support, legal protection, and we'll help you recover everything that's been taken. Recover. Such a simple word. Such an impossible idea. I closed my fingers around the card like it was a lifeline. Will I get in trouble? I asked. Absolutely not, he said firmly. You're the victim, Mrs. Carver. And once we file a claim, everything Daniel used under your name will be audited. That's not on you, it's on him. My stomach twisted, not with guilt, but with grief. The grief of a mother, finally realizing her child had been choosing convenience over conscience for years. Jacob watched me closely. Do you want to go back there tonight? I shook my head slowly. No, not anymore. Then let's get you somewhere warm to rest. Outside, the snow had thickened, drifting in slow curtains of white that glowed beneath the street lamps. The world felt muted, wrapped in a hush that made my next steps feel strangely sacred. Jacob helped me into the car, making sure I was settled before he closed the door. He drove with quiet care, not filling the space with unnecessary words. Somehow, that silence felt safer than any apology or promise could have been. We didn't go far, just across town to a small guest house, registered under North Star Haven, a 2-story brick home converted into temporary apartments for seniors in crisis. Warm yellow lights glowed from every window. A Christmas wreath hung on the door. It felt welcoming. Inside, a cheerful woman named Myra greeted me with a softness that nearly undid me. Welcome, Lena, she said as if she already knew me. We've been expecting you. Expecting me. The words landed like a balm. She led me to a cozy room with a soft quilt, a rocking chair, and a tiny bookshelf stacked with novels. A small heater hummed in the corner, filling the room with quiet warmth. This is yours for as long as you need, she said. No rush, no pressure. My throat tightened. Thank you. When she left, Jacob lingered at the doorway. You're safe now, he said gently. I'll check on you in the morning. And after that, we'll start the process. Process? He nodded. Everything. Protecting your identity. Filing the reports. Setting up a new place for you. And, he paused, holding your son accountable. I pressed my lips together. My heartbeat felt too loud. I never wanted to hurt him, I whispered. You're not hurting him, Jacob said. He hurt you. What we're doing is setting things right. I sighed, exhaustion settling into my bones like winter frost. Do you really think I can start again? At my age? Jacob smiled, warm, genuine, the smile of someone who has known darkness and survived it. I don't think it, he said. I know it. You've already taken the hardest step, walking away. I looked around the room, simple, small, but mine. For the first time, I said softly, I feel like I'm waking up. Jacob nodded. Rest tonight. Tomorrow, the real change begins. As he left and closed the door behind him, I lay back on the quilt and let the silence wrap me like a blanket. No footsteps above me. No voices criticizing. No door closing me off. Just peace. But peace doesn't come without consequences. And somewhere across town, in the house I had just walked away from, the first cracks were already forming, cracks that would soon swallow the life Daniel and Mara had built on silence, lies and borrowed names, because by the next morning, the world would know what Daniel had done, and the fallout would shake every corner of his perfect life. Morning arrived quietly, no footsteps above me, no hurried voices, no muffled tension pressing through the walls. Instead, I awoke to sunlight warming the quilt and the sound of distant voices from the kitchen below. Real voices, friendly, unhurried. I sat up slowly, letting the stillness settle into my bones. For the first time in years, I wasn't bracing myself. A soft knock sounded at the door. Come in, I said. Jacob stepped into the room, holding 2 cups of tea and a gentle smile. I thought you might want something warm. I took the cup gratefully. Thank you, Jacob, for everything. He sat down across from me. Ready to take the next step? I nodded with a steadiness that surprised even me. I am. He placed a folder on the table between us. We started the paperwork early. Identity protection, fraud notifications, a legal statement that confirms you never gave consent for your son to use your name or home equity. My chest tightened. This is really happening, isn't it? It is, Jacob said softly. And because he used your information on multiple documents, it triggered a mandatory review. I swallowed. A review? An audit, he clarified. One that the IRS doesn't ignore. My hands trembled around the cup. And Daniel? Jacob sighed through his nose. He's already been contacted. A strange mix of emotions churned inside me. Sadness, relief, fear, and something sharper. Justice. A word I had spent a decade tiptoeing around. What did he say? I asked. Jacob leaned back. He said it must be a mistake. He said he thought you approved everything. He said he was taking care of you. My stomach twisted. Daniel always had a way of rewriting truth into something that painted him gentle and responsible. He claimed I knew. I whispered. Jacob nodded. He insisted you agreed verbally. I exhaled shakily. And Mara? His jaw clenched. She's already posted a vague message online about being betrayed by people who want attention. I think she knows what's coming. The betrayal didn't sting the way I thought it would. Instead, it felt like confirmation of something I had sensed for years. Jacob set the folder aside. We don't need to confront them directly. The agencies will handle everything. But there is one more step we need from you, a recorded statement. I can do that, I said. I want to do that. His expression softened. Good. It will protect you and prevent them from claiming anything else in your name. We drove to the North Star Haven office, a modest building with a mural of ocean waves painted across the front. Inside, volunteers and staff greeted Jacob warmly, and each one welcomed me with sincere kindness. No pity, just respect. Once inside his office, Jacob placed a small recorder on the desk. You can start whenever you're ready, he said. I took a deep breath, and I spoke. I told the story not with drama, not with bitterness, but with clarity. The small dismissals, the quiet humiliations, the rules that kept shrinking my existence, the financial exploitation, the emotional erasure, the years spent unseen. I spoke until my throat hurt and my heart felt strangely lighter. When I finished, Jacob placed a hand gently over mine, but only after I looked at him, giving silent permission. You did something brave today, he said. I didn't feel brave, I admitted. Just tired. Bravery and exhaustion look very similar, he replied. But the difference is what you do next. Before I could respond, his assistant knocked on the door. Jacob? You need to see this. She handed him her tablet. His face tightened as he read. Then he turned it toward me. A local news headline filled the screen. Suburban couple under investigation for elder fraud. Son alleged to have used mother's identity for multiple financial CLAMs under it. Pictures. Daniel, Mara. Their perfect smiles frozen in a story they could no longer control. I pressed a hand to my mouth. Oh, Daniel, I whispered. Jacob watched me carefully. You don't have to feel guilty. I don't, I said softly. But I didn't feel triumphant either. Just resolved. The article was spreading fast. People were commenting, sharing, condemning. The world that had ignored me for so long was now paying attention. This is only the beginning, Jacob said quietly. The truth is stepping into the light. I inhaled slowly, feeling the weight shift inside me. Less burden, more clarity. What happens now? I asked. Jacob looked at me with a determined calm. Now, he said, we build your new life. But before that new life began, something unexpected happened. Someone from the past reached out, and it was a message that would change everything all over again. The news spread faster than anyone expected. By the next afternoon, dozens of messages poured into North Star Haven's inbox, some sympathetic, some angry. Many from people who had recognized the pattern far too well. But none of those messages compared to the one Jacob handed me later that evening. We received this a few minutes ago, he said, his voice gentle. I thought you should read it privately. He placed a sealed envelope in front of me, plain, unmarked, except for my name written in handwriting. I hadn't seen in years. Ava. My granddaughter. My hands trembled. As I opened it, inside was a single sheet of notebook. Paper with a message in uneven, handwriting grown, but still familiar. Grandma. I saw the article. Mom is furious and Dad won't talk. Everyone keeps saying you lied. But I don't believe them anymore. I think I understand now. And I'm sorry I never stood up for you. Please don't give up on me. I want to see you. Ava, a tear slipped down my cheek. Not from sadness, at least. Not the old kind. This was something gentler. A spring thaw after too many winters. Jacob watched quietly, giving me space. She's just a child, I said softly. She only knew what she saw, what she was taught. Children learn what they're given, Jacob replied. But they grow when someone finally shows them a better path. I folded the letter carefully and held it against my heart. I had lost so much these past years, but maybe not everything. Can I write her back? I asked. Of course, Jacob said. And when she's ready, she can visit you here. I nodded, feeling the beginnings of something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in a long time. Hope. The foundation of a new life over the following weeks. Things moved quickly. The fraud reports were processed. My identity was protected. Daniel's unauthorized financial moves were frozen pending investigation. And Mara stripped of her business contracts and online. Endorsements went strangely quiet. But I didn't follow the details closely. Not out of avoidance, but because something in me had shifted. For the first time in years, my life wasn't tied to someone else's demands, moods, or expectations. North Star Haven wasn't just a temporary refuge, it was a community. A place where I wasn't invisible. A place that didn't shrink around me. I attended group breakfasts. Helped other women who were rebuilding. Learned to knit new patterns. And began sharing small pieces of my story, enough to help. Never enough to reopen old wounds. Slowly, I became more than the woman who had been pushed into a basement. I became someone seen again. The cottage by the water one morning. Jacob invited me for a drive. There's something I want to show you, he said. We drove along the coast until we reached a small cluster of cottages near the water. The air smelled like pine and sea salt. Waves lapped gently against the rocks. He stopped the car in front of a little, blue cottage with white shutters. What do you think? He asked. I blinked. It's beautiful. It's yours, he said simply. Fully covered by the foundation. A permanent home. If you want it. I stared at him, too overwhelmed to speak. After a long quiet moment, I whispered, Jacob, why? Why do all this? He looked down at the strip of grey scarf he still kept in his coat pocket. Because you didn't walk away from me when I needed someone, he said. You saved me when I had nothing. Now I'm just returning the grace. Emotion rose in my chest, warm and unsteady. Thank you, I whispered. No, he said gently. Thank you for being the kind of person the world doesn't forget, even when it tries to. A knock at the door the first night in the cottage. I sat in the rocking chair by the window, knitting a new scarf, lavender and grey this time, for no one in particular, just because I could. Then, a soft knock echoed at the door. My heart lifted before my mind caught up. I set my knitting aside and walked across the small, cozy room. When I opened the door, a familiar face stood on the porch, snowflakes caught in her dark hair. "Grandma." Ava's voice trembled. "Can I come in?" I opened my arms. She stepped into them without hesitation. And in that moment, in that tiny doorway of a new life, something in me finally healed. Not because everything had been fixed, but because something true had begun. Final message. This was not a story about revenge. It was a story about remembering your worth, even when others forget it. About choosing peace over silence. About finding a home not in walls, but in people who see you. And above all, it was a story about a woman who finally stepped into her own life again. If you like my story, please like this video. Subscribe channel and comment below what kind of story you like this. I will find for you real stories.